Hello and welcome to DIY Therapy. As always, we'll start with our disclaimer. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. My name is Will. With me as always is Andy, and we're actually in the same room.
Hey, yeah. Good morning. You're looking sharp this morning.
You know, well rested. Well rested.
Good for you. Good for you.
Unlike someone else I know.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you just did the move and everything is now...
Yeah, actually, we haven't done a podcast in 2 weeks.
No, yeah.
So last week, we moved an entire home within 1 day, 4 giant moving trucks. I can't move. I think I need my own therapy at this point. And I am also just living out of boxes. So I'm just lucky that I found a belt this morning. So that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think it's more lucky for me than for you that you found a belt.
Actually, it makes no difference for me. Pants are usually optional for me.
Not here.
Oh. Okay. No. All right.
Today we're going to talk about kind of nothing specific ailment or whatever. Probably more along the lines of do this, not that. Things that we kind of little tweaks that we have run across that people kind of either continue to do when they have a problem or something along that line.
Yeah. We've got a couple topics that I think are interesting. Like a lot of times, Will and I have discussed off air, this patient's coming in and they're doing this, which is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. Or they're doing this and, yes, that's good, but they should also be applying this type of stretch or this type of activity. So I think the first one we're going to talk about is ice versus heat, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
heat. Everyone likes heat.
Everybody loves heat. Okay, and heat feels really good typically as it's on your body, but
on my body.
That just really creepy.
That happened.
Yeah. Wow. Now I wish we weren't in the same room together.
Womp womp.
Too bad. So heat, is one of those things that most people typically will feel like it is very helpful and is very soothing. The problem is it should really not be applied on almost any circumstances within 72, 96 hours,
at least
any time after an injury. And quite frankly, I always kind of joke around with people, you can almost never go wrong with ice. Yes, there are some very specific instances where you shouldn't be doing ice if you have like a Raynaud's phenomenon, which is a specific...
it's vascular...
It's a specific vascular disorder. You would know typically if you have that.
And it would be more of your... like hands, extremities is where you tend to notice it the most.
Yeah, your hands become very blotchy, almost like a pale white.
They almost look ghostly to the point where imagine you're totally dehydrated, but just in your hands.
Yeah. And so even when you're talking about even arthritic changes, or when you're talking about any kind of muscle strain, a lot of times people hear, well, heat is going to be good for a muscle strain. Well, what's the underlying pathology? What's the underlying problem that's really causing the muscle to be strained? So a lot of times heat can still make those things aggravated. So usually I will obviously recommend heat in some cases, but usually my go-to is ice, just because it helps to just kind of calm things down. Yes, it's not as comfortable when you first place ice on your skin, but what'll end up happening is there'll be actually a numbing effect that'll allow you to...
You have to wait for that to happen, though.
Yes.
People aren't usually patient enough to get to that. When you first put the ice on, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, you'll actually have almost like a sharp pain that starts.
Almost burning.
And then it'll be burning. And then eventually it may turn, obviously numb, which is where you're getting that kind of analgesic effect. Careful. So, ice is obviously going to be something that you do anytime you have an injury within 72 to 96 hours, no matter what. I think one of the big things that you want to think about too is, if you are heating, okay, how are you feeling not 20, 30 minutes after after you heat, but how do you feel an hour, 2 hours, okay? A lot of times when people are heating and it's actually causing more pain or more problems, is they'll actually feel good for that first 20, 30 minutes, and then an hour later, 2 hours later, they really feel like, I got to get some heat back on there because this is starting to hurt. Well, what you're actually doing is you're forcing the whole healing process into another kind of an excitatory state, which is causing you to feel like you need to put more heat on it, which is then forcing it again into an excitatory state. So from a kind of physiological level, heat is going to increase blood flow to an area. It's going to dilate any kind of blood vessels, and then cold is going to do the opposite of that, where it's going to actually constrict those blood vessels, decrease the amount of blood flow that's to that area, which is usually a good thing when we're having initial injury, because with an initial injury, usually the body will have an over-response where it will actually allow too much blood flow to go to that area, and it will begin to swell. So
swelling be bad.
Swelling is bad, yeah. So in general, I always tell people, especially if you've been heating quite a bit and you're not getting a lot of results, try icing. Okay, nobody likes it, especially in the winter, but icing a lot of times is going to be something that you may get some better results from.
Yeah, it will not hurt to try.
Yeah. And actually, there is one other note that sometimes if there is some type of serious pathology, ice will actually increase your pain dramatically. And if that's the case, it's something that you need to let your doctor know about, and or actually go to a prompt care or emergency room, because if there is some serious condition that's going on, and ice really does increase your pain to 10 out of 10, even after you get to that numbing phase, that's actually an indication that there's a serious pathology going on, and that can be something that you need to get checked out. So just word to the wise on that aspect of it.
Yes, so ice good, heat question mark.
Yes, yeah. You can go wrong with heat. You really can't go wrong with ice.
Right.
That's essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah. All right. What else you got?
I don't know. What else you got?
Plantar fasciitis.
Okay. Very common one, right?
Yes. For those who don't know, it's basically pain on the bottom of your foot, essentially. I mean, that's how would you describe it? That's what it is. The plantar surface of your foot.
Yeah. So heel. Typically,
yeah.
Typically, it's going to be heel to midfoot. It's not going to be like underneath the base of your toes or your or your metatarsals, which are really the bones.
Which those are your toes and not your
foot.
What? I'm being semantics.
I hate you. Everything about you right now, I hate. I have to wear pants in your house. You're getting semantically on me. Semantically? Not a word.
No,
not a word. I made that one up.
Yeah, we can add it to it's coming the end of the year, so we could add it to Webster's new words.
You know what we should do is at the end of the year or sometime we should make a podcast about all the stupid things that we said on the podcast.
That would be too long.
Well, and that would mean we'd actually have to go through and listen to them again.
No, we're not doing that.
I have not listened to
one
of our
If anybody
podcasts.
wants to make a list, we'll gladly go back and read that list and maybe comment on
and mock ourselves.
Yes, that is not a problem.
Way.
That is not a problem. But going back and physically listening,
it's too much time. Too much time. So it's usually at the base of the heel, and the plantar fascia is not. It's not a tendon. It's not a muscle. It's a piece of connective tissue. And so one of the things that a lot of people will do is they'll actually try to stretch out the plantar fascia. They may take a tennis ball and roll that tennis ball on the bottom side of the foot, and they may also
do the same thing with ice. Freeze the ice water bottle and make that ice and just roll their foot on that.
Mm-hmm. And those are all great and grand, and those are things that you should probably continue to do. A lot of times one of the big recommendations that I'll make for people too is, before you actually get up in the morning, stretch before you actually put your foot down onto.
Yeah, because that's super painful. I've been through this. It's not
fun.
So
So essentially, most people will sleep, and people will sleep where their toe is pointed. Okay, or their foot is pointed, and that keeps that fascia in kind of a shortened position. And so when you first initially weight bear on the foot, you're going to get this initial stretch, which causes a inflammatory response or a pain response right away. So if you can stretch prior to actually putting your foot down onto the ground, then you're hopefully allowing to at least create some kind of input to that system that is not so negative, so that you can have a better reaction. But and so, of course, it's important to stretch, right? And, other simple stretches are calf stretches against the wall, calf stretches, letting your heels hang off the edge of the chair, or not chair.
Chair?
Stairs.
You want people to stand on a chair? Let me get this straight.
Only my 85-year-olds. That's it.
With poor balance.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I usually put a blindfold on them first.
Of course.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you?
I mean, I'm sure everything else is fine with their balance, and it's been fine.
And I usually tell them to do it in a bathroom when everything's wet.
Yes. Oh yeah. Of course.
Yeah, so.
And make sure that the phone is farthest from.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're evil. So no, but so letting the heels hang off of the edge of the stairs, not chairs, is something else that you can do. But I think what an important issue about this is that the fascia is a large piece of connective tissue, and yes, it can be stretched to a certain extent, but to actually get significant amount of stretch, the research indicates that it doesn't really become very pliable and stretch. In fact, it takes like some kind of ridiculous amount of force to actually stretch or deform fascia by like 1%. It's something like 2,000 some odd newtons.
Yeah, isn't there?
There's all kinds of research.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can't you hang like a car off your Achilles or something to that effect?
Not Achilles, but like fascia, like your IT band.
Okay.
Which your IT band is also considered like a fascia type of connection. But there are smaller segments of the fascia that could be eliminated or could be stretched. But I think the biggest thing that the stretching does for you is it creates an input to your brain that isn't negative. And so that sometimes can help desensitize that area. So, yes, stretching is good. Yes, that is something that you need to implement, using a tennis ball, all that kind of stuff. But I think the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is like a lot of times it can be just the irritation of your whole entire nervous system around that area. So a simple nerve glide.
Basically is sort of like a feedback loop. So it's your brain is like overreacting to stimulus, and if you can calm your brain down and your nerves down, it might help reduce your pain.
Yes, yeah. And so one way to introduce like a really positive stimulus for that feedback loop is what's considered a nerve glide. So there's a couple ways to do that.
Well, what when you say nerve glide, that means we're basically...
It's not so much stretching the muscle or the tissue. It's gliding the nerve through the actual structures, allowing it to be...
I've heard it called nerve flossing, which is kind of...
Nerve flossing, yeah, that's the exact same thing.
It's more, to my mind, it's a little bit more... It puts in your brain what it's actually doing. Yeah. Because if you think about it, everything in your body moves separate of everything else. Your muscles don't... You move separate of your skin, yada, 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 yada. Through hook or by crook, your nerves can get bound down or just get, inflamed to the point where they get stuck and they're just not moving as they should. So this is a way to do that.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's also not a specific stretch on it. It's actually taking the whole nerve through the system.
Because you can't stretch just one part of the nerve.
Well, you can but that'll usually irritate it.
Ugh, why would you want to do that?
Yeah, well, that's like taking one end of a string and pulling on the other end. But what you really want to do is you want to take both ends of the string and kind of glide it through the system.
Yeah, like you're flossing.
There you go, like you're flossing.
I need to do more of
Hence, nerve flossing. So, do you want to describe how you do that? There's really two decent ways to do it.
I always like to do it when they're sitting up.
Okay.
They sit in a chair or something, hard chair, and you would kick your whatever leg that your foot is attached to that hurts. You'd straighten your knee, and then you could do one of two ways. You pump your foot back and forth like you're accelerating on the gas, letting off the gas, and then you can do it that way. And if you want to make it a little bit more, not really extreme, but you can also take your chin to your chest while you're pumping your foot. That'll help.
Perfect.
You can also do it laying down, right?
Yeah. So the other way to do it is laying down, where you lay down on your back and then you grab behind your knee, bring your knee up about even with your hip, kick your leg out, and then you pump your ankle at the top maybe 10 to 15 times.
I feel mine was close. Was clear. You laughed at mine, but I feel like mine was way clearer.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Let us know. Let us know.
Yeah, tell us who's more right in this.
You can email us at DIYtherapy206@gmail.com. We want to know who's a better descriptor.
And just note what he just said.
Yes,
there.
Descriptor. I'm like Skeletor. I am Descriptor.
What?
I don't know. That's what he sounds like. He's have that weird.
You did just watch He-Man, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I like 10 minutes of it. And it was...
Wait, did you say it was the movie He-Man?
No. I wish it was. Yeah, the cartoon, the original cartoon.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let us know who's better at explaining things like exercises, because quite frankly, I'm terrible at it. So,
yeah, agreed for that. But this particular one instance, though, I want to know who was better.
All right. So next topic. Neck stretching.
Yes. So people tend to. Yeah, you see it a lot in movies when they're gonna start a fight. They pop their neck.
Okay. Yeah. So
good or bad? Hot topic. Hot topic.
Generally speaking, bad. I mean, there's really no need for it. So the thing that I see people all the time do when they come in with neck pain is they start taking their ears and moving them closer to their shoulder, stretching as far as they can. They'll also take their head and spin it around because they feel like that's loosening up their neck.
Yeah, that's a common one.
Two things about that. If every time you stretch and you get relief for 5-10 minutes and it comes right back, that's not a good stretch.
Yeah.
That's just not how the body works. Okay. Number two, when we talk about people kind of rotating their head all the way around, the neck is not a ball and socket joint like, say, your shoulder and or your hip. So the neck is not designed to move around in a circular pattern.
Continuously.
Yeah.
Really.
Rotate.
You can do it, but it's not something you should do repetitively.
Yeah, especially things where things are agitated and irritated. You're going to pinch, compress, irritate different types of structures. In fact, sometimes that's where we'll do that as an assessment to see whether or not we can see if there's a mechanical issue at one specific quadrant or one specific area of the neck, but it's not something that you want to be doing on a continual basis. Instead of doing those types of things, what you're going to want to do is really get your head in more of a neutral position. Watch where your head is in space. Get your head backwards. And when I say backwards, I mean more like in a retracted position where you kind of tuck your chin in so that your head isn't sitting so forward. And that's going to actually create more slack on a lot of that tissue and so more relief on some of that tissue. So a lot of times when we're overstretching things and we do it repetitively, then it actually becomes more of a problematic motion for us. So that would be the one thing that I'd say with, people are doing this, or you should do this versus not that. Don't roll your head. Don't just continually repetitively crack or stretch your neck just because you think it feels good or gives you that instantaneous relief. Another side note on the neck cracking, a lot of times that's something where you'll actually get some immediate muscle relaxation because of the way that the nitric oxide will actually leave the joint. It's a natural muscle relaxer. But again, that only is going to last between 10 and 15 to 20 minutes. So then you're going to have this.
Explain why there's nitric oxide in there from the muscle relaxing.
Well, it's inside the joint capsules themselves.
That's what the actual crack is.
Yeah, so it's a cavitation within the joint.
Yeah.
So there's a cavitation in the joint, and that releases that out into the body, which is a natural muscle relaxer. But then we get almost addicted to doing this cracking, and when we're cracking, we're taking that joint all the way to the very end range of motion, which may not be bad, but it also may not be good, and everybody's circumstances are a little bit different.
Right.
So, so I don't typically recommend people to crack their necks. If you're having issues when you're sitting, it's probably because of whatever position you're holding yourself in. Stand up, walk around, get your head back a little bit, maybe go lay down, those types of things, but don't just keep cracking the neck.
Yeah, I'll put it because the chin tuck, I can't describe that thing. See, when I'm in the room with a patient, I have struggled for many years on how to describe to a patient how to do that maneuver. So I will put a video in the show notes on how to do that, because a chin tuck is great if you can do it, but it is.
This is not the medium to describe a chin tuck.
Because we could tell you how to do it, but it's. One, it's not going to do it justice, and two, you might hear us and visually not understand what we're talking about.
Yeah. So if you could post a video.
In the show notes, I'll put a link to a YouTube one that I think is good.
Awesome. But that's our kind of do this not that section. We'll do this occasionally when we don't have a bigger topic to talk about. We also if there's any other topics that you guys want to hear, email us. I don't know what our email address is, but
good for you. DIY therapy.
You can see I'm really invested.
DIY therapy 206 at gmail.com. Yeah, or you can go out to the Facebook group and you can chat in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything else?
So, news on the robot apocalypse. I was watching a video from Boston Dynamics. They made a robot The robot dog. They made it dance to Uptown Funk.
Hold on a second.
Have you seen this?
Do our listeners
I don't think
know how we joke around about the robot apocalypse?
I think
you need to do a backstory.
I think it's 2/3 joke, 1/3 real.
Yeah, total fear.
Yeah, because we watch Westworld, which is a bunch of robots, and we're watching. I'll link to that too. The Boston Dynamics of the robots that they're doing and the abuse. Granted, they're testing it, which is what they need to do, but they're putting it on the internet so the robots will, when they do gain consciousness, will look at that and say, "Listen, you jerks!
Look what you did to us."
That's gonna be like the fourth thing that they see that's gonna push them over the edge, and thus Terminator.
Skynet.
Doesn't matter it's the same thing. It all ends the same. I just want to know. I want to get those programmers in a room and watch any movie with robots where they all go bad, which is 95% of them.
Has any movie with really actual AI that ends up working and ends up operating, does it ever end well for humanity?
Star Wars, and that's questionable if they're slaves.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't entirely know how that works.
Yeah. And
that is the only one. Even in like Star Trek, there's one android, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. The computer isn't an AI. It's just like a really awesome Siri. It's just,
an awesome Siri.
It really is. They're like, those that say, "Computer, do this," and it'll just do it. It's more and more advanced Siri.
You need to post the robot jumping around and doing the hurtling one too.
Yeah, I'll link to the parkour one that they
cool
think.
Too.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool too.
I don't know if it's cool. It's terrifying.
No, and by the way, we're not really scared, but it's just a running joke we had. Will does actually have nightmares about this.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. All right,
let's wrap this up, shall we? So you can go do your things. I don't need to do anything.
You're so lucky.
This podcast was for educational purposes only. It's not designed to diagnose or treat. When beginning any exercise program, it should be reviewed and discussed with your medical professional prior to beginning. Information on this podcast is not designed to replace medical treatment. Remember, treat yourself.